It's 4 o'clock in Radio Cairo, time for World of Info. Well, it's time for World of Info from Radio Cairo. Dua Muhammad is at the control. My name is Dr. Amr Mabrouk. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we are very proud to have with us His Excellency Ambassador Eduardo Varela, the Ambassador of Argentina in Egypt, a man with a very colorful and fruitful career in diplomacy. He has a degree in law, a master in international relations, and a master in science and society from Australia, and worked in the embassies of his country in China, Australia, and in Geneva, the permanent representative there as an assistant to him, and in Rome, and now he's the currently ambassador of Argentina in Egypt. Sir, it's a great pleasure and honor to have you with us on air to talk about the beautiful country of Argentina.
No, thank you, Doctor. It's my pleasure.
Really, it's every time people hear the word Argentina, and I think everybody here, whenever they know that you are the ambassador of Argentina, would always ask you about football. But we are going to postpone the question of football, of the great Maradona and the great Messi, to talk about Argentina, the country of beauty, the country of glorious resources, and the country of people that was welcoming immigrants from all over the world, a country that has accepted and integrated people who came from distant places in the world, and yet, although a place of immigration, yet it carries a lot of what people would like to call Latino, and what they like to call the country of Tango. Mm-hmm. So today we'll talk about Argentina, but we have to go back in history to build the future, right, sir?
Yes.
So it has Argentina had a long history for fight of independence, from being established as a Spanish colony in the 1776 to the War for Independence from 1810 to 1818, and final reorganization into a federation in 1861 after very long, tiresome civil wars. Why did it take so long? I mean, it's almost 100 years of fight against the Spanish authority, and trying to build a country and trying to have an independent state, a country that deserves to be independent. What took that? Why did it take so long?
Well, actually, what is now the territory of Argentina was discovered, even though discovered is a concept that now is under question, because I mean there were people there already developing their own culture when the Spanish arrived. But let's use this conventional sort of naming the process. Was discovered by the Spanish in the 16th century. The first Spaniards arrived to what is now the territory of Argentina. They conquered the territory, and they established sort of they colonized the country through administrative organization. What is now Argentina at the beginning was part of the vicereign of Peru, with capital in Lima. At a certain point, because of the importance that the city and port of Buenos Aires was taking, the Spanish decided to rearrange the administrative organization of the colonies, and they created the vicereign of Rio de la Plata, River Plate, with capital in Buenos Aires. That was in 1776. A few years later, a couple of decades later, there was a process in Europe, the Napoleonic Wars. Napoleon invaded Spain, and as a response to these developments in the metropole, the cities in the colonies in South America started to create their own government. These government were governing in the name of the king, because the king was in jail at the time. The Spanish king was in jail by Napoleon. But that was the beginning of our independence process. There was a reaction from Spain, and we have the Independence War, but which was a continental project. It was not Argentina; it was a continental process and project. The War of Independence against Spain, that took not that long, because I mean the last battle, the final battle of the Independence War took place in 1820. Argentina has already, a few years before, declared its independence. That was in 1816. But I mean, the war continues until as I said, 1820. But once we got independence, we have a domestic conflict. We have a civil war that took half a century. And what we have there, two factions, and the question was the organization of the country, whether it will be centralized government or a federation. We have a period of instability and war that, as I said before, it took around 50 years. At the end, we have a constitution that establishes a federation. We are a federal republic. And this constitution, with some changes, is the same we have in force up to now. So that's in
a nutshell.
In a nutshell, more or less the answer to your question. I mean, we have the war of independence was a continental enterprise, and then we have our own internal domestic fight, civil war, that ended up in the 60s of 19th century.
So from the 1861 onwards, we see something very strange happening, is that a country that is very wealthy and it has all the possible natural resources that can keep the people very well fed, wheat, meat, and other things. So Argentina has enjoyed an almost unparalleled increase in prosperity. And by the early 20th century, it already ranked as the 7th wealthiest developed nation. So what was the cause of this prosperity? Just the fact that there are a lot of natural resources and not a very big population, or what?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there was this, we are very efficient producer of food, basically grain and meat, on the one hand. Then there was a very favorable international environment, because there was the time of the first globalization, so to speak. So we had access to the main markets. And there was also another factor, which was a very lucid and far-seeing elite leadership in the country. That there is the effect of this combination of factors was this period of prosperity, which put us, as you said, among the richest countries in the world at the time.
And this, of course, has led to more problems, because people thought that they are invincible, right?
Yes,
after 1930, despite remaining among the 15 richest countries until mid-century, it descended into political instability, suffered periodic economic crises that sank it back to underdevelopment. How could this happen with all these beautiful resources?
It's a sad story.
Yes, I know. I shouldn't bring sad stories to our program, but
it's true. But what happened in 1930 is that the international situation,
the Great Recession, yes,
exactly, it changed. There was big change in the international environment. As one of the effects of that was that countries went back to protectionist policies that put us in a very uncomfortable situation. On the other hand, there were some domestic developments, new actors, the effect of the previous prosperity on one hand, and the effect of the migration coming to Argentina, new actors that claim their own space. That brought some instability at the political level. This instability was at its turn fed by the economic situation, and this, let's say, negative combination of factors, in a way, I mean, I'm not a historian,
yes,
but in a way this is what could explain why we went backwards after 1930.
And then there 1946, after all this turmoil, a gentleman by the name of Piron came to Egypt, a populist coming after the end of populists in Europe, a man who has raised from prosperity and was not very well known, became a real charismatic leader, brought with him a very beautiful wife who is part of the the people, or the lower class of people, and therefore she was admired and loved by everyone. So this was 1946, and there was a rise and fall of Peronism, the death of Eva, and a very special period in history. So how to analyze the rise and fall? I know that we have went into history so much, but in 5 minutes we're going to finish, because this period, because of the song and of the opera, and everybody knows about Eva, everybody knows about Piron, and everybody knows about the resurrection that happened later on in the 70s and the early 80s, in the 80s, when Piron came back. So this is sort of a resurrection. It's like a very romantic saga, or very dramatic. How can you tell us about that? I mean, because people knows about it, like they know about Messi and Maradona, they always know about Eva Peron. So we have to satisfy the need of the people. Excuse me, Excellency, for that, but we have to discuss it.
Of course. No. It's I'm delighted to try to at least give my vision on that very important issue. Of course, Peron is very important in our history, particularly in the 20th century. It's very, there is a lot of discussion in Argentina. It's very, very intense debate, both at the academic level and also at the political level. I'm very passionate. I mean, even when Peron died almost 50 years ago, still there is a lot of passion for and against. And but what we can say, I think that most people would agree that the main contribution of Peron to the Argentine history and social processes was that he put the working class on stage. He gave voice to the working class.
The underprivileged.
Exactly. Under Peron, these people had a voice, has a place in the political and socio-economical games in the country. And in other societies, in Europe and in some other Latin American countries, this role was played by the unions and the leftist parties, labor parties, socialist parties, even communist parties. In the case of Argentina, it was Peron who do this, who give this boost to the working class and put them as a relevant political actor. That made him. That's why he's so important.
And he was like a godlike, but his wife also takes a place beside him, and a lot of people, historians say, if not for Eva or Evita, there would have never been a strong living myth of Piron.
Of course, Evita was very important, of course, and Evita as Peron, we have the same problem. I mean, it's very, very
debatable. Yes,
and there are a lot of passion put in this debate. But of course, she was a very strong woman. She probably, it's true that maybe you can't think of Peron without Evita. She was a very important part of the whole process, and people loved her.
Especially her illness and her death put her like a saint.
Exactly, this is a romantic, figure, because she died very young.
Yes,
she did a lot of things in a very short time. She lived only 33, 34 years.
Yes.
I mean,
and she was very much his junior. I mean, he was an older man, right?
No, he was around 50.
Yes, when he married her. Yes,
and she was very clever. She was a great speaker. People love her, and she died dramatically and tragically
from
young.
cancer. Yes,
and of course, then there is all the mythology built. This is a very mythic character, and all his image has a plus coming from the rock opera Evita and the movie and Madonna playing Evita.
Yes,
of course, that all this helps to
dramatize things
and to build up this very special character, of course.
And Piron,
but it doesn't mean that she was not. Of course, she was very important.
And Piron tried to replicate that again once in the 70s when he came again to power. He brought a wife who was energetic and something like that, but things were not the same, right?
No. Well, Peron was toppled, from the 30s up to 1983, our political system, in a way, has incorporated the political role of the military. So we have many coup d'etat during this period. Peron was toppled by a coup d'etat, military
1955,
coup d'etat in 1955.
And sent to exile.
Exactly. He was sent to exile. He went first to Paraguay, Venezuela, Dominican Republic,
and then ended in Europe, right?
In Europe, in Spain. He came back to Argentina in the early 70s. He was already old and sick. He was elected president again for the third time in a landslide victory. I mean, he got 60% of the vote, or more than 60% of the vote. But he died a few months after taking office.
So you cannot tell that he was really tested in his third term.
Actually, it was a very turbulent years, those of his last period as president. Very, very turbulent times.
And his new wife took over.
She was the vice president, so she took over, but she was not. I mean,
she was not Evita.
She was not at the exactly. She was not up to the challenge, and that prompted up a new coup d'état. But the interesting thing about Peron and Peronism, as I said, I mean, there is still a lot of passion put on this. But it's interesting to see and to know that we have election this year in Argentina. We have three main contenders: the incumbent, President Macri, the opposition, and there is a third one with some possibilities that can sort of do a good.
And this third party is Peronist or what?
I mean, in this, because we vote formula, president and vice president. We have Peronists in all the formulas. Of course, there is the Peronist formula, which is
president and vice president.
President and vice president. The candidate as vice president is former President Cristina Kirchner. She is now candidate to vice president. There is the incumbent, President Macri. His vice president is a very important Peronist senator. And then we have a third formula headed by an economist, very prestigious, former Minister of Economy, who is also Peronist. So we have, in all the options we have, there is some element of Peronism.
So we always say that people like this, charismatic people like this, so he's still ruling emotionally Argentina from his grave, right?
His legacy is very strong.
So these three contenders, who are, of course, we were not saying fighting each other, I mean democratically fighting each other, have one thing in common between them, which is Peron basis, and meaning that they are actually taking the slogan of supporting the working people, because this is what keeps this movement attractive to the people, right?
Yeah, the problem is there are many Peronism. This reflects, the fact that we have different formulas with Peronism is that there is a lot of Peronism. You have Peronism from the right, from the center, from the left. And in a way, this is also, we can read this also as a symptom of weakness. There is nothing that brings them together. There is no one only expression of Peronism. So they are everywhere. That, in a way, is a weakness of the movement. But it has something to do with the history and different periods of history in which Peronism take different clothes. Let's say.
So different hats, same Peronism. Right. So this makes the man as a man of stigma, or does it make him? It's very interesting to see how people are still having this romantic bounding to the character or to the appearance, to consider him to be still reproducible in different ways. Right.
I still there. It's weaker and weaker because young people have no experience of Peron. For them, Peron is something, from the past. It's more abstract. But of course, he's still projecting his influence in the country and in our politics.
So we had in the 90s another charismatic leader, Menem. And of course, in Egypt and in the Arab world, in the Middle East, he was also famous, because in the rest of the world, Peron was famous because, as you have said, kindly enough, you said that it's one of the causes is the Evita and Madonna and the opera and the saga. But Menem had his share as an immigrant, coming from an immigrant family, coming from the Middle East, from Syria or Lebanon, and living and bringing up a family and becoming a rich businessman and a rich politician and the president once and twice. So where does Menem fit in the history of Argentina? Because we're talking about people who are bringing bells in Egypt.
No, well, you made a very good introduction of Menem. I mean, one of the main things you can signal out from Menem is his origins. I mean, and the fact that he has an Arab background, very strong Arab background, and he was very intelligent and very able politician, and he was two periods. He was president for 2 periods, and yeah, I mean, he was the beginning of the presidency of Menem was very auspicious. And this is interesting because, I mean, we talked before that different shapes or different flavors of Peronism, and Menem was very liberal. Well, he wanted to I mean, he put forward a policy, economic policies oriented to liberalism, to privatizations,
capitalizations, which is totally against the Pironic idea, right?
Exactly. Open economy, integration to the world, and it was quite successful. But there was a basic mistake. I mean, we can say it now that the base of this policy was a monetary policy based on what is called a currency board, which basically means that your currency, in our case the peso, was pegged to the dollar. 1 peso, $1. That was very useful in order to control inflation, which was and still is a structural characteristic of our economy. I mean, in my lifetime, the only period of my life I remember as not having inflation was during Menem.
Really?
Yeah. And because of this policy, it was very effective as inflation control, but affect your competitiveness, because, I mean, you are pegged to the value of the money, the currency of the most competitive economy in the world, that's the United States. So the experience ended up in a dramatic crisis.
Yes, that happened in the
2001, 2002. Yes. Yeah, it was horrible.
Where things went in chaos, and it was really very hard time, because this is the thing that people in the Middle East and the whole world remember, this horrible crisis of the millennium, right?
Yeah. He was not. I mean, he left the presidency. The new president was Fernando de la Rúa, who died last week, and he had to manage how to get out of this situation, and we can say, I mean, he failed, and we have the horrible fail politically and economically, and we have this horrible situation both in economic and political terms, because after the president resigned, De la Rúa resigned as president, and then we have a period in which in 1 week we have 4 presidents, this kind of crazy things. But at the end, I mean, things sort of found their way out. We were very much benefited by the high increase of the price of commodities at the beginning of the millennium.
So this was life-saving, right?
Yeah. That was very, very important for us, and allow us to get out of the crisis with in a more or less controlled way. And in a way, that's where we still are. I mean, of course, the prices of the commodity went down, but we are struggling to accommodate, to eliminate all the obstacles and constraints that our economy has. We have to take advantage of our very obvious competitive advantage, particularly in agricultural sector and agro-industry, and that's where we are now. I mean, we are fighting for that in that direction.
So more about Argentina with His Excellency Ambassador of Argentina in Egypt, Mr. Eduardo Varela, and we'll talk more after this break. So we are still listening to Radio Cairo, World of Info, with His Excellency Ambassador Eduardo Varela, Ambassador of Argentina, Republic in Egypt, and we were just listening to Tango. Tango and Argentinians and Tango and Argentine really is making a difference. It is part of the heritage of the people, and we cannot miss having you, sir. Instead of talking about football only, we have to talk about the tango. Mm-hmm. The tango has really shaped the country, shaped the emotions of the people, and there is now the time of the resurrection of the tango. And we had a beautiful piece of music that you were kind enough to bring with us here in the radio. Tell us about this piece of music in particular, sir.
Yeah, well, yes, this is like a very, very new, very modern expression of tango. It's still tango, but with this element of samplers, of sort of kind of DJ interpretation. I find it very beautiful and very, very authentic, because still, even when it is modern and with modern means, still is tango. The spirit of tango is there, and it's the title of this song was Santa María de los Buenos Aires, which is the original name of the city of Buenos Aires.
Do you still keep the name, or you just say Buenos Aires?
We say Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires. The official name of the city is Buenos Aires.
But Santa Maria, the name stayed for some time?
Yeah, I suppose so. It was the name that the Spanish put to it. It was a city founded by the Spanish. It's the name they put it. But I suppose with the time, Santa María de Buenos Aires is too long, so people start to shorten, and at the end we are Buenos Aires.
And Buenos Aires means the good air.
Good air, yeah. Which is not true, as I said.
You told us that it is not that good air because there is a lot of humidity.
Yeah, the humidity is very high. Yeah.
But it's still a beautiful city to live in.
Yes.
So when we're talking about Buenos Aires, we have to talk about tango. And tango is part of the culture. And there is always, I read once in an article that Argentinians have a very strange love-hate relation with tango, because all the generations before our current generation, His Excellency and my generation, the people who are in their 20s, right? It's okay, we'll take that as a compliment. So people in our generation, those who were born in the 60s and the 50s, and even the early 70s, are not that fond of the tango, while their parents were very fond of tango, and they really knew how to dance the tunes and how to enjoy listening to tango music. And then the new generation now, the people who were born in the late 70s, early 80s and 90s, have a resurrection of the tango. They became very much interested and influenced with it all through their lives. So your children who are now graduates of universities and working, you told me that they are expert tango dancers and they really enjoy the tango. So tell us about this mystique and this story of tango, please.
Well, tango, it's we are very proud of tango. I mean, it's because it's ours. I mean, we share it with. I don't want my friend from Uruguay to get offended or angry against me.
Of course not.
Because it's something we share with our brothers from Uruguay.
How did it start?
It started. I mean, it was at the beginning. It was marginal music for poor people living in the outskirts of the city, and it was seen. I mean, by the mainstream society, it was seen as something bad, something related to sin, even. But of course, with time, it gained space, it got room in the society. It was getting more and more sophisticated. It benefited from the immigration, people coming from different parts of the world, add some elements to the music, even instruments. The main instrument of tango, the more idiosyncratic instrument of tango is what we call bandoneon, which is a German instrument.
Bandoneon is the one which is like the accordion?
It's like accordion,
yes.
yeah. It's smaller and it has a very peculiar sound, very difficult to play.
It has hundreds of knobs, right?
It's complicated. It has a magnificent sound, and it's the sound of tango. I mean, we identify tango with bandoneon, and it's a German instrument. Originally, tango was played guitar, flute, piano, and then other instruments were incorporated. The music was getting more and more sophisticated.
This was early 20th century or even 19th century?
Yeah, it was the beginning of the. I mean, the last years we can put the origin of tango in the last years of the 19th century, I would say. Then it developed during the whole 20th century. It was very important already. In the 40s, it was very important. It was mainstream, and everybody loved tango. And even, I mean, not only the music get more sophisticated, but also the lyrics, the poetry. Many important poets compose tango songs, or wrote tango songs. So the poetry of tango became very, very important. Unfortunately, it's not something we could share with our friends from Egypt because it's Spanish. But I mean, even when you don't understand the words, you can feel the quality of the poetry when you listen to good singers and good tango. It was very popular in the 40s and 50s. Then, of course, in the 60s arrived the Young Revolution, you know. Beatles,
the rock and roll and the Beatles and Supertramp and these people.
And I mean, young people tend to try to differentiate themselves from the old people. There was this generational gap, very strong. And in the case of Argentina, as you said, Doctor, our generation tend to reject tango because of that. I mean, tango was the music of the old generation of your parents, and you were in war with your parents. You want to differentiate from your parents, and that was a pity. Of course, with the time, we, my generation, of course, we learned to appreciate the quality.
But you lost the dance.
We lost the dance.
Yeah. You don't dance tango?
No. Of course, my grandparents, they dance tango, very good dancers. We don't dance tango. We dance, you know.
So maybe the film of Scent of a Woman and the famous tango dance of Al Pacino and the unknown lady has brought the attraction or the attention of the Argentinians to these songs again, or to this tango again.
I don't know. Sometime I think in the 80s and 90s start this renaissance of tango as a dance in Argentina. Nowadays it's very popular. There are many places where you can dance tango. Of course, it's also a tourist attraction. Many people, because tango became universal. You have tango people, we call it tangueros, all over the world, even here in Egypt.
Yes, here there are certain schools that teach tango, and they have very faithful admirers. And
you know, that something that I noted all over the world is that tangueros, people who like tango, are very passionate. It's like an addiction. It's very strange.
So in all the places that you served, you have met these people, whether this was in China or Argentina or Australia or Geneva.
Exactly.
Every time you meet these in Rome, right? And were you amazed to find them here in Cairo as well?
Yeah, well, I expected something, but I was surprised by the level and extension. Still, it's not a big community. You know, one of my dreams, I like to see whether I can do it before I finish my work here. Is we have every year in August in Buenos Aires there is the World Tango Championship, and you have couples coming from over the world to participate in this tournament. And there are some cities in which you have like local, regional
championship.
Selecting people to go to the World Championship. There was, of course, in Italy, in Milan or Rome, I don't remember, in Paris, in Moscow, in many cities in Europe, in the US, in Istanbul, Istanbul is a tango is very strong in Istanbul. And my dream is to have one of those classification tournaments here in Egypt.
That would be really nice and interesting.
Yeah.
I think they are concentrated in Maadi and Zamalek, this population.
Yeah. We need critical mass of people and some support. I had the chance once to talk very briefly about this with the Minister of Tourism. She was quite enthusiastic about this. But
she's a very enthusiastic lady, yes. We can talk to her about that.
Brilliant.
Yes.
She's brilliant,
yes. Dr.
But
Anya
we need to have, as I said before, some critical mass of people in terms of quantity. Quality, you don't need to be, the best, but at least a certain level of quality. We are getting there.
So we can have an Egyptian team representing us.
Why not? That would be great. That would be fantastic.
Still, we have time, and Dr. Anya Mashat is very active in all aspects. I think she would support this herself. So this gives us an idea about tango. And I think this gives you another topic than football. The people always, when they meet the Argentine ambassador, they're always talking about football. So unfortunately, or fortunately, we have to talk about football. Maradona still lives in the minds and imaginations and the dreams of Egyptians and the whole world. And also Messi governs, or Messi rules. The people think and believe, and I also believe personally, that he's one of the greatest players. Even he could have, you can say that he has really overtaken the place of Maradona as a famous player. I know he's been very unfortunate on not receiving a World Cup like Maradona, but definitely he still rocks. So every time you're at a place, always you're asked about these two players, right?
No, yes, of course. Football is very important in Argentina. We are it's something also that brings a lot of passion in Argentina, like here in Egypt. Egypt is also very, we call it futbolero. It's a very football-prone country like us. We share this passion for football. And so that
how long has been their football?
That gets us together.
The British or the English, when they introduced football, I don't think that they ever expected that it will be even more popular than in their country. I think it was in the early 20th century that people started to admire. When did it reach Argentina? Is it?
It was the British. British workers that were in Argentina working in the railroads, basically. And in the meat industry, and they started to play football. They created their first football teams.
When was that? In the early 20s?
Again, end of 19th century, beginning of 20th century.
So it's almost contemporary with the British, right?
Yeah. And then it develops in Argentina very well. By the 40s, it was something very well established, an important part of our culture, and we are lucky enough to have, of course, Maradona. Before Maradona, Di Stefano was a great also football player, but Maradona was like something special. Everybody. Even when he's a bit polemic, because he's a very peculiar character, but nobody can deny his quality, his extraordinary, his genius as a football player.
Yes, definitely.
And then we have, of course, Messi, which is, we don't like, at least I don't like to make this comparison between Messi and Maradona. They are both great. They are both Argentinian, and we are very proud of both of them. And it's true, Messi couldn't get up to now the World Cup. Still, there is some chance, hopefully, in Qatar in 2000.
We remain always optimistic because I think a lot of Egyptians are very much big fans of Barcelona simply because Messi is playing there.
I know.
And the man is real talent. When you watch him, you just feel very much amused when you're always watching.
And I was very sad because of the performance of Egypt in this African Cup. I expected more. I don't think that the team was. It was quite competitive, but sometimes things doesn't go as we want.
But we talked about the famous people of Argentina, and we cannot miss a great man. and a man who is influencing the lives of not only the faithful Christians, but all the people all over the world. A man with a great faith, a great love of humanity, and this is the Pope Francis, a man who has chosen to be named Pope Francis for the very first time, Pope Francis I, in trying to immortalize the Franciscans, or the Saint Francis, who is a very man of negotiations, a man of who Saint Francis is really carrying a lot of beautiful images of a man who is accepting the other. And Pope Francis I is a man who is accepting all people from all religions and from all nationalities. And I think you're very proud that he is one of his, he comes from your native city, right?
Yeah.
So can we talk about, have you met the gentleman?
Yeah, I work in Rome.
Yes.
So as I was there when he was elected Pope, so it was a great emotion. It was really moving to be there in the place where he was when they announced the name of the new Pope. And I met him. I have the possibility of and the luck and the honor to greet him a couple of times. And of course, he's as you said, he has this sensibility for, particularly for those in less favorable situation. The poor people, the sick. He has this very strong Christian sensitivity for those who suffer most. And he's very Argentinian. He's very tanguero. He loves tango.
Really, yeah.
And he loves football. He's fan of. He has his team in Argentina. He follows his team. He's very happy when his team won, and
that's very human being-like attitude, right? This is very good. You were here when he visited Cairo?
No. I arrived a bit after he was here.
Yes. So this is very interesting, and of course the fact that he visited Cairo, and also Saint Francis visited Egypt and met Sultan Kamel. And they had a very beautiful theological discussion that has been immortalized all through the history books. Everybody has written the story from his side. Sultan Kamel's historian wrote the story from their side, and the Saint Francis and his followers wrote it from their side. But the most important thing about what is written, what both of them have agreed upon in their both stories, is that they agreed that they are different, but yet they are brothers, and that they are human beings. And I think that when Pope Francis came to Egypt, he carried the same message that was carried by Saint Francis in the early 13th century. So two visits of two famous, important Francis who came to Egypt. So
he's one of his main interests is this dialogue between religions and to understand the other and to try to accept and live together. That's very important.
Definitely.
And that is one of the issues that make us proud of him. Yes.
Definitely. So after the break, we're still listening to the beautiful talk with His Excellency Ambassador Eduardo Varela, Ambassador of Argentina in Egypt, and we'll talk after the break about Egypt and Argentina. Stay with us, please. Wow. So we brought it from the famous serenade from the Scent of a Woman, the master scene of Al Pacino, but it is not called Scent of a Woman, it's called
Por una cabeza. That's the title in Spanish. I don't know how to translate it into English. There must be an expression. This has to do with the horse racing. When the horse wins for the difference of one head, the head of the horse.
When their horses are racing neck to neck, and then suddenly one head supervenes on the other. So por una cabeza. And it's really a beautiful scene, melody, a beautiful piece of melody, and everybody. It's an old one, right?
Yeah. This is from the 20s, 30s, 20s probably.
Yes.
And it was the most popular version is the one by Carlos Gardel, which is our Kulthum is like our most important singer. Most important, I would say, popular artist in the history of Argentina is Carlos Gardel. Carlos Gardel.
Oh, that's interesting. So we cannot leave you, sir, before talking about the most important thing that you're doing here in Cairo, which is improving the relations between Egypt and Argentina, which I believe you're doing a great job up till now and always, and inshallah more optimism to go. So it's a strong relation between Egypt and Argentina that carries a lot of admiration and strong friendship. How long have we had a relation between Egypt and Argentina officially?
Well, I mean, the diplomatic relations, it's 72 years. 72 years.
That is almost from the 40s, right?
Yes. It's a long relation, very rich, as you said, with different chapters. I mean, we have a very important and strong trade relation, political relation. We technological and cooperation in technology very important in our relation. At the political level, we have recently there was a meeting between both President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Mauricio Macri. They met at the margins of the G20 summit in Osaka, in Japan.
That was quite a few weeks ago. Yes.
Very important meeting. They met before that. They met in China, also in the margins of G20 summit. That was in 2016, I think. We had the visit of our vice president a couple of years ago. I mean, I was already here. It was a very good visit. Our vice president is a lady, and she met the president, the then prime minister, Sharif Ismail, and she had working meetings with many ministers. We have.
She's the one who is entering the elections this time, right?
No.
She's not.
No, she's the current vice president. Now she will leave, as I told you before, because the candidate for vice president is another person. Is a Peronist senator. This lady, Gabriela Michetti, she will continue her political career for sure. She's very talented. And she did a great work when she was here in Cairo. She's handicapped, and she moved in a wheelchair.
Yes, I remember her, of course.
Yeah.
She's a very good example of persistence and perseverance.
Exactly. Yes, that's right. So we have at political level, we have the best of relation. On trade is very important partner for us. Egypt is very important. We have to work on the question of investment. We don't have Argentinian investment here, nor Egyptian investment in Argentina. The Minister of Investment and International Cooperation, Sahar Nasser, she went to Argentina in March this year. She participated there in an international conference on South-South cooperation, but she also had bilateral meetings trying to identify areas of cooperation in investment. And then, of course, there is the cultural relation. There we have to work more because we don't know each other very well. Football, of course, is important because you have Mohamed Salah, we have Messi and Maradona. That helps to get us closer. And as I said before, we share this passion for football.
And we had an Argentinian coach.
Yeah, you used to have an Argentinian coach, but now people miss him. Yes. Of course, there is football. We have to work, for example, on Tango. I mentioned my project, my dream to have this championship in Egypt. I know, something like Tango in the pyramids or something like this. This coming October, we will have a group of tango dancers in the Opera House.
You brought a group before?
Yeah, we brought musicians. We brought a very talented bandoneon player. He performed at the Opera House also. That was 2 years ago. Last year we brought another very talented musician who plays sax. And he performed together with an Italian musician, also very, very talented, who plays accordion. It's a very strange mixture. I mean, you think of it, sax and accordion, but it was
a great success, yes.
It was fantastic.
This was in the small theater?
Yeah. It's a pity. I mean, you will enjoy it. You will have enjoyed it.
Yeah. Maybe next time there is the Tango.
I'm very proud of these two performers. The Rodolfo Medero, the bandoneon player, and Javier Girotto, the sax player. And now in the Opera House, this occasion will be in the big hall. We have this dancing, and I think they will perform also in Alexandria. I'm not sure, but I'm sure that they will be here in Cairo in October. At the same time, we are trying to organize some sort of master class with these people coming to perform at the Opera House. Master class and workshop for tango people here in Cairo.
That would be a very first step for the competition, right?
Yes.
To correct some moves.
Yes. That's on tango. Then another important cultural expression in which we both Egypt and Argentina have a very strong tradition, and we don't know each other very much, is cinema, movies. Of course, Egypt has this fantastic history in cinema. We also have a very strong tradition in cinema.
We call the Egyptian movies the soft power of Egypt.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I know how important it is in the whole Middle East and North of Africa. Yes. We have to work on that. I'm very proud that, for example, in all important movie festival, cinema festival here in Cairo, in Egypt. I mean, in the Cairo Festival Cinema, the Cairo Cinema Festival, the Guna Festival. There is a very important festival on women, cinema made by women. In all of these festivals, since I'm here at least, not because of me, because of the quality of Argentine cinema, you have at least one Argentine movie in each festival.
I think this is a lot of things to build on. We have the tango, we have Messi,
we have cinema, we have
and of course we have the great Pope Francis. And definitely when we talk about Egyptian-Argentinian relations, we'll definitely something to cherish. A very old friendship relation from 72 years. There was never a competition, but always a friendly basis that needs to be more tapered on the ground of investment and a lot of things that we can build, a lot of bridges to be built. Excellency, really we enjoyed your talk, and I would like you to promise us that you will come again, hopefully soon, to talk about Argentina and Egypt and talk about more about tango. In this beautiful afternoon in Cairo, we had the pleasure and honor to have with us His Excellency Ambassador Eduardo Varela, Ambassador of Argentina in Egypt. Sir, thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. It was a pleasure.
It was a great pleasure to have you with us in your second home here in Egypt, in Cairo, and in Radio Cairo. This was World of Info. My name is Dr. Amr Mabrouk. Dua Muhammad is at the control, and our friend Nadine Emil helped us very much in this afternoon. Thank you, Nadine, and looking forward to see you next week.